He was already there the first day I sat on the bench. It was early spring, the kind of afternoon that tricks you into forgetting winter still clings to the shadows. I came with a sandwich I didn't want and a headache I couldn't shake. I only meant to stay long enough to breathe. The bench sat beneath a spindly maple just starting to bud. It faced the narrow path where joggers passed, and dogs strained at their leashes. A breeze rattled the maple's bare branches, scattering the last brittle leaves across the path. It wasn't hidden, but it wasn't obvious either. Tucked just far enough from the main sidewalk to feel like no one could see you unless they meant to. He looked up when I approached, but didn't smile. Just nodded, as if to say, "I'll stay in my world. You stay in yours." I took the far end of the bench and unwrapped my sandwich. We sat like that for 10 minutes, maybe more. He didn't check his phone or fidget. He just sat there, one leg crossed over the other, hands folded like he was waiting for something he didn't expect to come. I left first. He said nothing when I stood. I didn't either. The next day, I came back. Not because I needed the bench, not even because I needed the air. I came because I didn't want to sit in the break room with its microwave popcorn smell and conversations I wasn't invited into. The bench offered quiet, stillness, space. He was already there again, same spot, same posture. His jacket was different, dark green today, worn at the elbows. A pair of pigeons bobbed around the base of the bench, pecking at crumbs left behind. I glanced at his hand without thinking. A wedding ring, gold, thick and plain. He didn't acknowledge me this time. I didn't expect him to. I sat, unwrapped another sandwich, took 3 bites and threw the rest away. My phone buzzed. "Where are you?" I didn't reply. I watched the message fade from the screen and turned it face down on my lap. He glanced over, just once. I must have looked tight or shaken or something, because he spoke. Quietly, like he wasn't sure I'd heard him. "Bad day?" His voice was low and warm, but not prying. "Something like that," I said. He nodded again, the same almost motion from yesterday. Then nothing more. We finished our silence side by side, like strangers who had once known each other in a dream and couldn't quite place where. The next time, I spoke first. "You always sit here?" He looked surprised, as if no one had ever asked. "Most days." "Lunch break?" "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes I just need to be somewhere no one expects me to be." I understood that, far more than I wanted to admit. We didn't exchange names, didn't offer jobs or stories or the usual conversational currency strangers use to pretend they know each other. Instead, we talked about coffee. He liked it black. I liked mine with too much cream and never enough sugar. He made a face when I said that, and I almost smiled. He brought a book the next day. I didn't ask what it was, and he didn't volunteer. But when he closed it, he slid it between us so I could see the title. The Things We Leave Unsaid. A novel, battered and soft at the edges, like it had passed through too many hands. "Any good?" I asked. "Not really," he said. "But it makes me think." I liked that answer more than if he'd loved it. One day I arrived late. My stomach twisted the whole walk from the office to the park. I'd missed lunch. I'd missed my meeting. The worst was the text. I hadn't meant to forget it, but I'd forgotten to reply anyway. Then another one came, more demanding. But he was still there. I almost walked past. I almost turned around. But he looked up, saw me, and shifted, just enough to make space. So I sat. Neither of us spoke. After a while, he offered me the sandwich from his bag. I shook my head. He held it out anyway. "Peanut butter, it's not great, but it'll stop your hands from shaking." I hadn't realized they were. I took the sandwich. A runner passed, headphones blaring faintly, but the sound faded, leaving only the rustle of the maple above them. The maple branches above us swayed, and something like sunlight dappled the bench. I looked at his hands. No book today. Just a wedding ring and fingers with calluses that looked like they used to play guitar, but hadn't in a long time. He didn't ask what was wrong, and I didn't tell him. But I stayed longer than usual that day, and when I left, he didn't watch me go. I almost wished he had. It became a ritual. I told myself it wasn't, that I just happened to like that bench. I needed air between meetings, not someone waiting for me. But rituals don't ask permission. They form when you're not looking. The way moss grows in a shaded corner, you forget to sweep. He was there most days. I learned not to expect him, but to hope. I'd round the corner near the tulip bed. He never noticed them, but I always did, and glance ahead toward the maple tree. Sometimes the bench was empty, and something tightened in my chest that I pretended was just indigestion. Sometimes he'd already be there, legs crossed, book in hand, as though he'd been waiting for hours and somehow still hadn't gotten bored. We started bringing drinks for each other. He brought me a vanilla latte once, not because I'd asked, but because I'd mentioned I liked them when we talked about how I was always cold. The park smelled faintly of cut grass that day, sweet and damp in the spring air. "I thought it might warm your hands," he said. The next day, I brought him a bitter black iced coffee. "I figured it might cool your temper," I joked. He laughed, not a loud laugh, but real. And then he said something that stuck with me for days. "I don't lose my temper. I just lose my shape a little." I didn't know what that meant, though I suspected. That day, my phone rang again. Not just buzzed, rang, full volume. I'd forgotten to silence it. He watched me flinch before I even looked at the screen. I answered anyway, pretended I didn't feel him watching me. "Sorry, I was in a meeting. No, I didn't get your message. Yes, I'll be home right after work." My voice sounded too light, too fast, like someone playing a part they'd rehearsed but never believed. When I hung up, I set the phone face down on the bench. My hand trembled. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice before falling silent again. "He hates it when I'm late," I said. I don't know why I said it. I hadn't meant to. He didn't react at first, though I saw his jaw tightening, just sipped his coffee. Then softly, "You don't seem like someone who deserves that." That quiet, offhand kindness broke something in me. Not the cracking of ice after a long winter. Not all at once, but like a hairline crack spreading through glass, invisible unless you tilt it just the right way. I laughed, but it wasn't a joyful sound. "Maybe I do. Maybe I make things hard." He shook his head. "People who think that usually don't." Neither of us said anything for a long time after that. A group of school kids ran past, their voices ricocheting through the park before fading into the distance. At length, I stood. My lunch break ended 10 minutes ago. "I should go," I said. He nodded, but not in agreement. More like acknowledgement. "See you tomorrow?" That was the first time he'd asked. And I said yes without even thinking. That night, I told my husband I'd been working through lunch. He said nothing, just made a sound in the back of his throat and turned up the volume on the TV. Later, when I came out of the shower, he was in bed, staring at the ceiling. He didn't look at me, didn't ask about my day. I wondered if he knew he was losing me, not to another man, but to silence, to stillness, to a version of myself I barely remembered. I didn't sleep well, but I dreamt of the bench, and the way he said my coffee had too much cream and not enough sugar. Like it mattered. The day I came late, the clouds had teeth. Wind tugged at the branches overhead, sending a shower of pale green buds onto the sidewalk. My coat flapped behind me, like something trying to escape, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd forgotten my gloves. I'd forgotten a lot of things that morning. He was already on the bench, as usual, book in hand, coffee at his side. But when he saw me, he closed the book before I even sat down. I didn't say anything, just lowered myself to the edge of the bench like my body was made of splinters. I kept my eyes on the ground, focusing on a torn leaf at my foot. We sat in silence. I could feel him watching me from the corner of his eye. Not staring, never that, but aware, present, like he was trying to gauge whether speaking would help or make it worse. He reached into his bag and handed me half a sandwich, the same kind he'd given me once before. Peanut butter, white bread, nothing fancy. I didn't want it. I took it anyway. "You don't have to say anything," he said. That nearly undid me. I pressed the sandwich to my lips, pretending to eat. My throat felt too tight to swallow. We sat like that for a while. He was quiet. I was trying not to fall apart in public. Eventually, I spoke. "He broke a plate last night." I didn't mean to say it. It just came out. I felt my shoulders tightening as I said it. The bench's wood felt rough under my palms, grounding me as I said it out loud. He didn't react right away, just leaned back like he was giving me room. He was angry I forgot to pick up the dry cleaning, I continued, my voice flat. Said I don't listen, that I never listen. Then he swept the plate off the table. It shattered everywhere. I spent an hour picking out tiny shards from the floor. A pause. Then softer. Were you hurt? I shook my head. Just startled. That was a lie. I'd been afraid. Not because I thought he'd hit me. He never had. But because something in his eyes had looked untethered, like he didn't care anymore if he frightened me. I'm sorry, the man beside me said. His voice wasn't pitying. It was careful, kind, and angry in a quiet, almost invisible way. Not at me. For me. I shouldn't be telling you this, I said. You're a stranger. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, sometimes strangers are the only people we trust, because they have nothing to lose. That landed hard. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I've always hated crying in front of anyone, especially men. I turned toward him, just slightly, enough to see the edge of his profile. The line of his jaw was set, but his eyes were soft. What's your name? I asked suddenly, surprising even myself. He blinked, surprised. You really want to know? I nodded. Mark. Simple, solid. It suited him. I hesitated, then offered it. Kayla. He smiled a little. Hi, Kayla. And that was the first time I felt like a person again. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. When the wind picked up, I stood. He did too, without a word. I turned to him. Thanks for the sandwich. He met my eyes. Thanks for trusting me. I walked back to the office slower than usual. I kept thinking about the plate, about how it hadn't broken because of anything I did, and how long it had taken me to believe it. Later that night, my husband asked why I seemed quiet. I told him I was tired. As usual, he didn't ask me why I was tired. He never does. But the next morning, I packed my lunch. And I added 2 sandwiches, not 1, just in case. He wasn't there. I noticed it before I even reached the bench. That small, strange emptiness, like something in the park's rhythm, was just a beat off. The maple tree still stood, its young leaves fluttering in a breeze too cold for spring. A crow cawed from a rooftop across the street, the sound cutting sharp through the park's emptiness. The bench was still there, weathered and waiting, but no Mark. Just the chill in the air and the maple casting a lonely shadow that somehow seemed darker without his presence. I sat anyway, unwrapped my sandwich, ate 2 bites, put it away. Without him there, I didn't know where to look. I'd grown used to that space between us, quiet, dependable. Not intimacy, but something just shy of it. Something safer, something real. A woman jogged past with her dog. A man in a blue jacket took the nearby trash can's lid off and fished something out. I watched him like I cared, because I needed something to fill the silence. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough to feel foolish. Long enough to think, you made this into something it wasn't. I told myself it didn't matter. He was a stranger after all. A stranger with a wedding ring and a voice like still water, and a way of looking at me that didn't make me feel small. But I missed him, and that terrified me. The next day, I didn't go. I stayed at my desk and watched the clock crawl. I told my coworkers I had too much work. I told myself the same thing. But the truth was, I didn't want to go back to that bench without knowing if he'd be there. On the 3rd day, I went. He was sitting there, book in hand, coffee at his side, just like always. But when I approached, he looked up, and something in his face shifted. Like maybe he had missed me too. Hey, I said. Hey, he replied, folding the book closed. I wasn't sure you'd come back. I wasn't sure you would, I said. A beat passed. I had to be somewhere, he said, eyes flicking down. Family thing. I nodded. I told myself it didn't matter. Did it? I looked away. Too much. He didn't answer that. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out half a sandwich. Peanut butter and honey today. Gourmet stuff. I smiled and unwrapped my own. Turkey and mustard. Questionable at best. We exchanged halves without comment. His was still warm. Mine was falling apart a little. He didn't seem to mind. We sat in silence, eating, watching the wind stir up tiny cyclones of pollen and dust along the path. Somewhere behind us, a dog barked, the leash jangling as its owner tugged it back toward the trail. After a while, I asked, "You still married?" It came out before I could stop it. Too blunt. Too risky. He didn't flinch, just nodded. "Yeah." More silence. Then he said, "It's not what it used to be." "Marriage?" I asked. "Me," he replied. "I'm not what I used to be. And I don't know if she misses the old version or if she just resents the one I've become." I let that settle. Then I said, "Maybe it's both." He looked at me, his eyes sad but steady. "Do you ever feel like you're standing in your own house and you don't belong there anymore?" "All the time," I said. "Except I'm not sure I ever did." A distant lawnmower started up, its low drone threading through the quiet like static. He let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "That's a lonely place to live." "It is." We didn't talk about our spouses after that. We didn't talk about what we wanted. There were things we both felt but couldn't name. Lines we didn't cross, because somehow that made everything we did share feel honest. When our lunch break ended, we stood at the same time. "I'm glad you came back," he said. I offered a small smile. "Me too." We didn't hug. We didn't touch. But when I walked away, my steps felt steadier. It was a Friday when I told him. The sky had that bruised look it gets before spring rain. Low clouds, too heavy to hold, pressing down like a secret. I almost didn't go. But something in me knew I needed to. Not to ask for anything, just to say it out loud. He was already there, hands folded in his lap. No book, no sandwich. Just sitting. When he saw me, he offered a small nod. Like he'd been waiting, but wouldn't have blamed me if I hadn't come. I sat beside him, closer than usual, still not touching. For a while we said nothing. Then I cleared my throat. "I packed everything yesterday." A gust of wind tugged at my hair, and I tucked it behind my ear just to have something to do with my hands. His eyes shifted to me. "Yeah?" I nodded. "He's not home this weekend. I'm going to stay with a friend. Somewhere he won't look." He didn't ask questions, didn't compliment my bravery. He just listened, really listened. I stared at the pavement, tracing a crack with the toe of my shoe. It's not just about the dishes or the yelling. It's the way I shrink when I hear his car in the driveway. The way I hold my breath when he's quiet for too long. Mark was still. Then he said, "That's not what love is supposed to feel like." "No," I agreed, my voice barely more than a breath. "It's not." A single raindrop spattered on the sidewalk between our feet, leaving a dark coin-shaped stain. Then he said gently, "Are you scared?" "Yes." I thought admitting it would make me feel weak. It didn't. It made me feel honest. "I don't know what comes next," I said, "but staying feels smaller than leaving." He nodded, slow and thoughtful. "That sounds like a beginning." I looked at him and asked the question I hadn't dared before. "And you? What about your wife?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I told her I've been thinking about counseling." That surprised me. "Together?" He gave a small, almost sad smile. "I don't know yet, but I need to figure out who I am now, whether there's still something left to save." I nodded. "That sounds like a beginning, too." We didn't say goodbye right away. The air between us was different now, not charged, not expectant, just full. Like everything we hadn't said had already been heard. When I stood, so did he. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I could feel something press against my chest. Not a desire, not longing, but gratitude. Like he'd given me something gentle in a world that had gone sharp. A breeze rattled the maple leaves above us, scattering a few across the emptying path. He held out his hand and I shook it. His grip was warm and steady. And when he let go, it felt like a door closing, Not with a slam, but with care. Thank you, I said, for seeing me. He gave a quiet breath of a laugh. I hope you find everything you were afraid to ask for. I walked away and didn't look back. But I carried him with me, not as a regret, not even as a what if, but as proof that kindness could still exist between strangers. That not every story needed a kiss to be a love story. I still pass the park sometimes. Not often. I don't go out of my way. But now and then, when errands pull me that direction or I find myself walking longer than I planned, I glance toward the old bench under the maple tree. The bench sits in dappled light beneath the maple, exactly as I remembered, as if it had been waiting all this time. It's never quite the same. Sometimes a young couple sits there, legs tangled and laughing. Sometimes it's a man eating fast food from a paper bag, his tie loosened and eyes heavy with sleep. Once, I saw a girl sketching in a worn notebook, her pencil dancing to music only she could hear. But I've never seen him again, and that's okay. We never exchanged numbers, never promised anything. We didn't belong to each other, not then, not now. What we shared lived in the quiet, in the sandwiches we traded without hesitation, in the silences that didn't need to be filled, in the names spoken softly, like secrets kept safe. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to remind you of the shape your heart used to take before you taught it to be small. They leave not with fanfare or pain, but with a kind of quiet grace. They leave something behind.
Original heartwarming fiction every week. Subscribe for your next great story.